Most people don't realize how lucky we are to have the night sky that we have, but we have some amazing stuff up there that is just pure luck, and we should take advantage of it. The first one is Saturn. There's a new paper out that shows that for 90% of Saturn's existence, it hasn't had rings. For 90% of the solar system's existence, it hasn't had rings. We're just lucky that we happen to be alive at the time when Saturn has rings. They've only been there for between 100 and 500 million years, and they're only going to be around for another 100 million years or so. So take advantage. Get a pair of binoculars, get a telescope, look at Saturn. This is what it looks like through my telescope, and this is what it looks like if you get close to it. But we're not getting close to it yet. Number two, eclipses. We're super lucky that eclipses happen to work out. I mean, the moon is 1/400th the size of the sun, but it's 400 times closer than the sun, and therefore those two circles look like they're the same size in our sky. That is a total fluke. We're just lucky that it lines up. So in your lifetime, plan on seeing an eclipse. For sure, like a total eclipse. And listen, if you're in the eastern part of Canada or in lots of parts of the United States, April 8th, 2024 is the time to do that. The third thing is we're lucky to see the stars at all. If we had other gases in our atmosphere or if our eyes had evolved differently, we would not be able to see the stars. And yet, when we look up at the heavens at night, we see these magical little dots in the sky, and they appear to move as the Earth rotates. This is a series of pictures I took in Kanab, Utah, but you can go up and look at the sky anytime and see those beautiful stars. We're just lucky they're visible. Another thing is the Milky Way. We just happen to be in the arm of a spiral galaxy, and so when you look in the plane of that galaxy, you see more stars than in other places. Now, for me, when I go out at night, I can't really see this. I have to get my camera and put on a long exposure and then get the stars to fill my frame, and then I look at the picture afterwards and I can see it. But if you get into a dark enough place and if your eyes are good enough, you can make out the Milky Way with the bare eyes. And I think that's something everybody should do because it gives you a real sense of where we are in the universe. And then the last thing is, because we live in this day and age, like in the last 20 years, there's a space station flying overhead that you can see. And if you go to a website called ISS Transit Finder and you put in your GPS coordinates, you can line things up to see this thing go over your head between you and the moon. And that makes for a good picture. So here are some images I took of the International Space Station flying over Toronto when it passed in front of the moon. It happened to be a supermoon. It was a pretty good day. Probably the best pictures I've ever taken. Don't want to brag. But when you take a picture like this, you just find yourself bragging. Anyway, that's 5 things we're lucky to have in the sky that you should be going to look at as soon as possible.